It's funny how silence can scream louder than words. And in that silence, in that dorm room, I realized my life was about to split in two, the one I had lived before and the one I would never escape. I was halfway through pulling off my t-shirt, sweat from basketball practice still clinging to my skin, when I felt the weight of eyes, sharp and unrelenting. I looked up, and there he was, Nate, my roommate, my best friend, staring at me like I was something he had never seen before, or something he had always wanted but never dared to touch. The air between us thickened. I swear the hum of the ancient dorm radiator grew louder, like it was covering for the fact that neither of us could breathe. I laughed nervously, tugging the shirt the rest of the way off. What? Do I have something on my back? But his eyes didn't move. They didn't flinch. And that was the first time I saw the kind of hunger people hide their whole lives. The kind that could burn through every lie we tell ourselves just to keep standing. Nate and I had been thrown together by chance. Two freshmen in a crumbling Midwestern university dorm in Ohio. He was the quiet type, the kind of guy who carried poetry books in his backpack and somehow made thrift store clothes look intentional. I was the athlete, the one who filled silence with jokes, the one who kept my secrets behind grins and casual shrugs. We weren't supposed to fit, but somehow, we did. Late-night ramen runs. Study sessions where I teased him until he smiled. Arguments over music that stretched into 2 a.m. Confessions about our families, our fears, the futures we didn't know how to chase. And now, standing half-naked under his gaze, I realized I had never really known him at all. Or maybe I had known too well. He blinked finally, like he had been caught doing something criminal. His face flushed, red bleeding up his neck. He turned quickly, fumbling with his notebook, pretending to write something. But the damage was done. That look had burned into me, and I couldn't unsee it. The week after was torture. He avoided me more than usual, keeping his headphones on, his shoulders hunched over his desk. But I could feel him watching when he thought I wasn't looking. I caught him once in the reflection of the darkened dorm window, his eyes darting away so fast it almost hurt. And me, I was falling apart. Because the truth I had buried under locker room jokes and ex-girlfriend stories was clawing its way out. I wanted him too. God, I wanted him. But wanting a boy in a place like this, in a state like this, it wasn't just dangerous. It was a war. It came to a head one Friday night. We had planned to go out with some friends. Maybe drink. Maybe let loose. But Nate said he wasn't feeling it. So I stayed too, telling myself it was because I was tired. But really, I couldn't stand the thought of him being alone in the room without me. The dorm was unusually quiet. Everyone else had vanished into parties, laughter echoing faintly from down the street. Our little room was a bubble of stillness. I sat on my bed, scrolling through my phone, pretending not to notice him scribbling in his notebook. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "What are you writing all the time?" I asked. He hesitated. Then, softly, "Poems." "About what?" He didn't answer, just closed the notebook, slid it into the drawer. That should have been the end of it. But I couldn't stop. "Is it about me?" The words came out sharper than I intended, like a knife thrown across the room. He froze, his hand still on the drawer handle. For a second, I thought he would laugh, shake his head, call me an idiot. But instead, he whispered, "Sometimes." And that broke everything. I sat there, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out every rational thought. My throat was dry, but my body moved before my brain could stop it. I crossed the small space between our beds and stood over him. "Nate, His name tasted like fear and hope all at once. He looked up, and in his eyes, I saw everything: terror, shame, and something brighter than both. I bent down, close enough to feel his breath against my skin. Then show me. For a moment, the world hung suspended. Then his lips were on mine. It wasn't careful. It wasn't practiced. It was desperate, raw. The kind of kiss that shattered rules and rewrote every boundary. My hand tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, and he trembled like he might break. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, his chest heaving. "We can't," he whispered. But even as he said it, his hands clung to me, as if letting go would kill him. The days after were a blur of contradictions. In public, we were just roommates, friends. In private, our hands brushed, our knees touched under the desk. Our gazes lingered too long. We kissed again, sometimes in the middle of the night when the world was asleep, sometimes in the golden light of afternoon when the risk felt like oxygen. But love, I was learning, was not always gentle, carried weight, and secrets have sharp edges. Because what we were doing wasn't just ours. It was dangerous. My teammates, his church-going family, the guys in the dorm who sneered at anything they thought looked weak, we lived in their shadow. And shadows have a way of suffocating light. I thought I could handle it, that wanting him was enough. But the more I had, the more I needed, and the more he pulled away. One night, I woke to the sound of him crying. Soft, muffled sobs from his bed across the room. I wanted to reach out, to hold him, but my body froze, because I knew what he was crying for. Not just fear of being found out. Not just shame. He was crying because loving me meant breaking himself apart. And I didn't know how to save him without breaking too. That was the night I realized this story wasn't going to be easy. This was the kind of love that could destroy user teach us what it meant to survive. And either way, nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after I heard Nate crying, everything felt wrong. He woke up before me, already dressed, notebook tucked under his arm like armor. When I sat up, groggy and half-blind with sleep, he mumbled a quick "going to the library" and slipped out before I could even say his name. The door clicked shut, leaving me staring at the empty space he had occupied. Should have been fine. We were just roommates, after all. But the truth burned inside me. I had kissed him. He had kissed me back. And now the silence between us was louder than anything else. At breakfast, my teammates slapped my back, joked about last night's party, about girls, about everything I used to say to blend in. But I wasn't listening. All I could think about was Nate, sitting alone in the library, maybe writing poems he couldn't let me read. Poems that might never see the light because they were about me. By the time I got back to the dorm that night, he was there, sitting at his desk, headphones in, pretending to study. I wanted to shake him, to force him to look at me, but I knew if I pushed too hard, he'd disappear entirely. So instead, I sat on my bed and said quietly, "Nate." He pulled one headphone out, wary. "Yeah." I swallowed. "I heard you last night." His face froze, his pen stilled in his hand. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with a voice so fragile it hurt to hear, he whispered, "I'm sorry." "Don't." My voice cracked. "Don't apologize for feeling." That got his attention. His eyes lifted to mine, wide and afraid. "You don't understand." "Then help me." He shut his notebook, shoved it into the drawer. "You think it's simple, but it's not. My parents, if they knew me, church. My entire life. I can't be this. His hand trembled as he gestured between us. I stood, crossed the space, and placed my hand on the desk, inches from his. But you already are. His breath caught, and for a moment, I thought he might let me in. But instead, he pushed back his chair and stood. I need air, he muttered, brushing past me and leaving the room. And just like that, I was alone again. The weeks stretched on, a painful rhythm of closeness and distance. We'd share moments, accidental touches, a look that lasted too long, a kiss stolen in the dark. But the next day, he'd retreat into silence, building walls I couldn't scale. One Saturday, we ended up walking downtown together, a rare pocket of ease between us. The fall air was crisp, the streets alive with people heading to football games or farmers markets. We stopped at a small cafe, and for once, he seemed relaxed, laughing softly at something I said. Felt almost normal. Then a couple walked past us, two guys, holding hands. My chest lit with recognition, a surge of possibility. But when I looked at Nate, his entire body had gone rigid. His laughter evaporated, his eyes darting around like he expected someone to point and shout. I reached across the table, fingers brushing his wrist. It's okay, I murmured. He pulled back instantly, shaking his head. Not here. Not ever. The words cut deeper than I expected. Not ever. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the weight of his words crushing me. I wanted him, yes, but I wanted more than stolen kisses and midnight whispers. I wanted to exist with him in daylight, to not feel like every touch was a crime. The question clawed at me, was I asking too much? Or was he giving too little? Things only grew harder when winter rolled in. The campus tightened with cold. Students bundled in scarves and coats. The dorm heaters groaning to life. And inside our little room, the tension burned hotter than the radiator. One night, we were studying side by side, the silence thick. Finally, I blurted, "Do you ever think about what would happen if we stopped hiding?" He stiffened. Don't. Why not? You're not scared of me, are you? His eyes flashed, a storm in them. I'm terrified of you. The words hit me like a punch. I leaned back, stunned. What the hell does that mean? It means you make me feel things I can't control. He snapped. His voice cracked, and he looked away, tears brimming. And if I let myself fall, I don't know if I'll ever get back up. I stared at him, throat tight. Maybe you don't have to get back up. Maybe you just have to let go. For a moment, it seemed he might. His hand twitched toward mine. His lips parted. But then he shoved his books into his bag, muttered something about the library, and was gone. Again. The breaking point came in December. Our dorm had thrown a holiday party. Cheap decorations strung across the common room. Students packed in with hot cocoa spiked with vodka. I tried to have fun, but every time I looked across the room, Nate was there standing stiffly by the wall, eyes following me, even when he tried to look away. At one point, a girl from my history class leaned in close, laughing at something I said. And that was when I saw the raw, unfiltered jealousy on his face. His jaw clenched, his hands fisting at his sides. I excused myself, heart pounding, and followed him when he stormed out. We ended up in the snow outside, our breath white in the freezing air. What the hell was that? I demanded. He spun on me, eyes blazing. What the hell was what? Don't play dumb, Nate. You looked like you wanted to kill me just for talking to someone else. Because she doesn't deserve you. The words tore out of him, jagged and loud in the night. Because I can't stand the thought of you being with anyone else. Silence. My chest ached with the force of his confession. Then why? I said hoarsely, stepping closer. Do you keep running from me? Snowflakes melted on his lashes, his breath shaking. Because if I choose you, I lose everything else. I reached out, cupped his face in my frozen hands. Then lose it. And before he could argue, I kissed him. There, in the snow, under the dim glow of a streetlight, we kissed like we were both starving. Like every denial, every retreat, every whispered apology had led to this moment. His hands clutched my coat, mine tangled in his hair, and for the first time, he didn't pull away. When we broke apart, his forehead pressed to mine. He whispered, "You'll ruin me." I smiled through the ache in my chest. Maybe I'll save you. The days after that kiss were different. Not perfect, God. Not even close, but different. He still hesitated. Still flinched when footsteps echoed down the hall. Still tucked his poems away where no one could see. But at night, when the world quieted, he let me hold him. He let himself be vulnerable. Soft. The way he never was in daylight. And me. I was falling harder than I knew how to stop. But the more I loved him, the more I realized something terrifying. Love alone might not be enough. Because the real battle wasn't between us. It was inside him. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to fight it for both of us. That realization hit hardest when winter break came. The dorm emptied. Students scattering back to families. To homes strung with Christmas lights. Nate packed slowly. His hands lingering on his books. His clothes. I watched him. The dread coiling in my stomach. 2 weeks. I said softly. He nodded. Not meeting my eyes. 2 weeks. But when he finally looked up, the fear in his gaze told me what he wouldn't say. 2 weeks in his parents' house. 2 weeks surrounded by people who would never accept me. Never accept us. 2 weeks where he would have to bury every part of himself I had finally unearthed. And I didn't know if, when he came back, I'd still be the one he chose. That night, before he left, I caught his hand. "Nate," I whispered, voice shaking. "Don't lose yourself there." He stared at me, something breaking in his eyes. Then, for the first time, he pulled me into his arms, not a kiss, not a secret touch, but a real embrace, full and trembling. When he finally let go, his voice cracked. "I'll try." And with that, he walked out the door, leaving me alone in the dorm, wondering if love was enough to bring him back whole. That winter was the longest of my life. The dorm was quiet over break, emptier than I'd ever seen it. Most of the guys had gone home, leaving behind nothing but bare mattresses and stray socks on the floor. I stayed because going back to my parents meant questions I wasn't ready to answer. And because part of me couldn't leave the room where his scent still lingered faintly in the sheets. In the drawer where his notebooks were hidden. In the silence that swallowed me whole. Every night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering what his parents were saying to him. What lies he had to swallow just to survive. Was he pretending to be the boy they wanted? Was he sitting at a dinner table nodding along to prayers while thinking of me? Or was he trying not to think of me at all? The days stretched. Snow piling higher outside the dorm windows. The radiator clicking in the silence. I buried myself in basketball practice. In meaningless games of pickup. In scrolling endlessly on my phone. Nothing filled the hole. By the time January came, I was frayed at the edges. and then walked back in. It was late evening when the door swung open. I almost didn't recognize him at first. His hair was longer, curling around his ears, his skin pale like he hadn't seen the sun in weeks. He dropped his bag by his bed with a heavy thud and stood there, just looking at me. "Hey," I said softly, my voice betraying how much I'd missed him. He swallowed, his throat working. "Hey." The word hung there, awkward and fragile. I wanted to cross the room, to hold him, but something about his posture stopped me. He was guarded, tense, like a soldier returning from a war he wasn't sure he'd survived. "You okay?" I asked. His laugh was hollow. "Define okay." I didn't push. I just nodded, giving him space, even though every part of me ached to close the distance. That night, he crawled into his bed without another word. I lay awake listening to his breathing, the faint creak of his mattress as he shifted. The gap between our beds had never felt so wide. The next few days were worse than I imagined. He was polite, careful, too careful. He asked about practice, about classes, about anything except us. Every time our eyes met, he looked away like he'd been burned. Finally, on the fourth night, I snapped. We were both at our desks, pretending to study. I tossed my pencil down and turned to him. "Are you just going to pretend it didn't happen?" His pen stilled. He didn't look up. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't do that, Nate. Don't lie to me." His jaw tightened. "It's easier this way." "Easier for who?" My voice cracked. "Because it sure as hell isn't easier for me." He flinched, finally meeting my eyes. "You think it's easy for me?" His voice rose, raw and sharp. "You think I spent 2 weeks in that house, sitting at that table, listening to my father preach about sin while my mother prayed for my soul, and thought, wow, this is easy." The pain in his voice ripped through me. I stood, crossing to his desk. My hands braced on the wood as I leaned down. "Then stop hiding. Stop letting them win." Tears shimmered in his eyes, but he shook his head violently. "You don't get it. You don't know what it's like to have people who will throw you away if they know the truth. Can't lose them." "And what about me?" My voice was hoarse, desperate. "Are you willing to lose me instead?" His silence was the answer I didn't want. That night, I left the dorm. I couldn't stay in the same room, couldn't listen to him breathe and pretend we weren't tearing each other apart. I walked the frozen campus until my hands went numb, until my legs ached. When I finally stumbled back in, he was a sleeper pretending to be. I crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering if love was supposed to hurt this much. Days bled into weeks. The semester picked up, classes and practices swallowing hours. But the ache never dulled. We became strangers again, 2 boys sharing a room but nothing else. Until one night in February. It was snowing hard, the kind of storm that buried the campus in silence. I came back late from practice, exhausted and frozen. The lights were off, but he was awake, sitting on his bed with a notebook in his lap. Before I could say anything, he spoke. "Do you ever feel like you're split in half?" I froze in the doorway. "What do you mean?" "Like there's the person everyone sees," he whispered, staring at the page. "And then there's the person you actually are. And you can't let them touch. Because if you do, everything falls apart." My throat tightened. I crossed the room, sat on my bed across from him. "Yeah, I know what that feels like." Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were raw, stripped of every mask. He held the notebook out with shaking hands. "Read it." I hesitated, then took it. The poem was short, but every word hit like a blade. It was about a boy who lived in shadow, who reached for light but pulled back every time because he was afraid of burning. About another boy who was the light, and how wanting him felt like salvation and destruction all at once. When I finished, my chest ached so hard I could barely breathe. "Nate!" Before I could say more, he crossed the space between us and kissed me. Hard. Desperate. The notebook fell to the floor. Forgotten. I kissed him back, every ounce of longing pouring into it. When we broke apart, he whispered against my lips, "I can't keep running." My hands cupped his face. "Then don't." That night, we didn't sleep. We lay tangled in each other's arms, whispering truths we had been too afraid to say. He told me about the weight of his family, about nights spent praying for God to take it away, about the shame that lived in his chest. I told him about the loneliness of pretending, about how I had laughed my way through locker rooms and parties while feeling hollow inside. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, painful, but it was real. For the first time, I felt like we weren't just hiding in shadows. We were stepping into the light together. Of course, the world didn't magically bend to make it easy. The next day, in the cafeteria, his hand brushed mine under the table. It was a tiny thing, but the way he jerked back, panic flashing across his face, cut deep. Later, he avoided me in the hallway, slipping into class without a word. But that night, in the safety of our room, he curled against me and whispered, "I'm trying." And that was enough to keep me holding on. Then came the basketball game. It was late February, a big matchup against our rivals. The gym was packed, the energy electric. I played hard, adrenaline flooding me, but every time I glanced into the crowd, my eyes found him, sitting in the bleachers, notebook in hand, watching me like I was the only person on the court. I'd never played better. After the game, sweaty and breathless, I found him waiting by the locker room. He didn't say a word, just grabbed my hand and pulled me outside, into the freezing night air. Before I could speak, he kissed me, right there, in the shadows of the gym, his hands clutching my jersey, his lips fierce against mine. When we finally broke apart, I stared at him, stunned. "You just kissed me in public." He was trembling, but his smile was real. "It's still in the shadows, but it's a start." That was the moment I knew. No matter how long it took, no matter how many times we stumbled, he was worth it. Because love, even in shadows, was still love. And maybe, just maybe, one day we wouldn't need the shadows at all. The shadows didn't stay ours for long. It happened on a Tuesday night. The kind of night when the dorm was half asleep. Students cramming for midterms or scrolling through their phones in the glow of desk lamps. Nate and I had been careless. Too many nights of pretending the world outside didn't exist. Too many whispered kisses stolen in the space between our beds. That night, he had fallen asleep against my shoulder. His breath was warm, steady. His body pressed so close it felt like he was part of me. I must have drifted off too, because the sound of the door clicking open jolted me awake. And there he was, my teammate, Ryan, standing in the doorway with a bag of chips in his hand, his mouth hanging open. For a second, none of us moved. Nate stirred, blinking in confusion, then froze when he realized where he was curled against me. His arm draped across my chest. Ryan's eyes widened. "Holy shit." "Ryan," I started, sitting up too fast, nearly knocking Nate off the bed. but he was already backing out, muttering, "I didn't see anything, man. I didn't," before slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Nate shot up, panic written all over his face. "This is bad. This is so bad." My heart was racing, but I tried to keep calm. "He's my friend. He won't say anything." "You don't know that." Nate's voice cracked, raw and sharp. "If he tells the team, if he tells anyone." I reached for him, but he pulled away, pacing the room like a caged animal. His hands were trembling. "I can't do this. I can't." "Nate." I stood, catching his shoulders. "Look at me." His eyes were wild, filled with fear. "This is exactly what I've been afraid of." I wanted to tell him it would be okay, that Ryan wouldn't ruin us. But deep down, I didn't know. The next day at practice, Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. Every time I tried to talk to him, he brushed me off with some excuse. The rest of the team didn't act any different yet. But paranoia dug into my chest like claws. When I got back to the dorm, Nate was sitting on his bed, knees pulled to his chest, notebook abandoned beside him. He looked up, his face pale. Did he say anything? No. I sat down heavily. But he knows. Nate buried his face in his hands. "We're screwed." "No, we're not." My voice was firmer than I felt. "I'll talk to him. I'll make sure he keeps it to himself." He shook his head, his voice muffled. "And if he doesn't, if it gets out, you don't get it. It won't just ruin me. It'll ruin you too." I wanted to argue, but the truth hung heavy between us. It was 2 days before Ryan finally cornered me in the locker room. "Look," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I didn't tell anyone. I won't. But, man," he shook his head. "Is this real? You and him?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, it's real." Ryan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Damn. I mean, I don't care. But some of the guys." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I knew what he meant. "Just keep it quiet," I said, my voice low. He nodded. "I got you. But be careful. Man, people talk." When I told Nate, relief and terror warred on his face. "So he's not telling anyone?" "Not now." He nodded slowly, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. "It's only a matter of time." That night, when I tried to kiss him, he turned his face away. "I can't," he whispered. "Not tonight." And I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how love could feel so heavy. The tension only grew. Every glance in the cafeteria felt suspicious. Every laugh behind us sounded like a secret joke. I watched Nate shrink into himself, quieter than ever, his notebook pages filling faster, his eyes darker. One night, I found him on the floor by his bed, his head in his hands. "Nate." I knelt beside him. "Talk to me." His voice was broken. "I can't live like this. Every second feels like a countdown to disaster." I pulled him into my arms, holding him tight as he shook. "Then let's stop hiding. Let's just be us." He pulled back, eyes shining with tears. "You don't get it. You can survive this. People like you, they'll still cheer for you on the court. They'll still want to be around you. Me, I'll lose everything. My family, my future, everything." The words gutted me, because part of me knew he was right. Spring crept in slowly, snow melting into mud, campus waking up with the promise of warmth. But between us, The chill never fully lifted. Until one night in March, when everything broke. We had been studying late. The room quiet except for the scratch of pencils. Suddenly, Nate slammed his book shut, startling me. "I can't keep doing this," he said, his voice raw. I frowned. "Doing what?" "This." He gestured between us, his hands trembling. "Loving you in the dark, pretending in the light. It's killing me." My chest clenched. "So what are you saying?" He swallowed hard, his eyes shining. "I'm saying maybe we should stop." The words hit me like a blade. "Stop." His voice broke. "I love you. God, I love you so much it hurts. But I can't be strong enough for both of us." I stood, my chair scraping back. "So you're just giving up?" Tears slipped down his cheeks. "I don't know what else to do." For a moment, couldn't breathe. Then I grabbed my jacket and stormed out, slamming the door behind me. I don't remember where I walked that night. Just that the campus blurred around me, the air sharp in my lungs, my chest hollow. His words echoed over and over. Maybe we should stop. But how do you stop loving someone who feels like your entire heartbeat? When I finally stumbled back to the dorm, the lights were off. Nate was in bed, facing the wall, his shoulders shaking. And I knew then this wasn't the end. Couldn't be. Because if love was strong enough to break us, maybe it was strong enough to put us back together. The storm between us had only just begun. The first time I ever thought love could feel like safety was when Alex leaned against me. His hand pressed lightly against my chest as if to reassure himself I was real. It was after the storm, after the chaos of confessions and misunderstandings, after the weight of silence that had kept us caged inside our own fears. We were still in that dorm room, the same four walls that had witnessed awkward laughter, painful glances, and the slow unraveling of secrets neither of us wanted to tell. But this time felt different. The hum of the air conditioner filled the space, steady and low, like a heartbeat we could finally hear. Outside the window, the campus was alive with distant shouts and the flicker of dorm lights. But in here, it was quiet, just us and the lingering echo of words we had finally dared to speak aloud. "I thought I ruined everything," Alex whispered. His voice cracked, low and trembling, but there was relief in it too, like someone who had just let go of a burden they had carried for far too long. "You didn't," I told him, and I meant it. Maybe he had broken me open. Maybe he had forced me to confront parts of myself I was terrified to face. But he hadn't ruined anything. If anything, he had saved me. He leaned his forehead against mine, closing his eyes. "I was so scared you'd hate me, that you'd never look at me the same way again." I let out a shaky laugh. "Alex, I've never stopped looking at you. That's the problem." It wasn't the kind of laughter that came from humor. It was raw, fragile, edged with the knowledge of everything we had almost lost. And when his lips finally brushed against mine again, slow this time, hesitant like a question he didn't know the answer to, I didn't hold back. I kissed him with everything I had been hiding, everything I wanted him to know. The kiss wasn't perfect. It was messy and trembling, our teeth clashing awkwardly for a second before we found the rhythm that belonged only to us. But it was real. It was ours. And in that moment, the world outside didn't matter. Time moved strangely after that night. Days slipped into weeks. And the more we leaned into whatever it was we were building, the more it felt like breathing, both terrifying and necessary. Of course, nothing about it was simple. Whispers started circulating in the dorm, curious glances turning into knowing stares. We weren't as invisible as we thought. And every time someone laughed too loudly behind us, my chest tightened, wondering if they knew, if they cared, if we were suddenly a joke whispered between strangers. But then Alex would catch my eye in the cafeteria, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, and the fear would fade, just a little. His smile was enough to anchor me, to remind me why we were doing this. One night, we walked across campus together, the autumn air biting at our skin, the leaves crunched under our shoes, the lamps casting halos of gold around us. Alex shoved his hands into his pockets, his shoulders hunched like he was carrying a weight too heavy for him. "You ever wonder what happens if people find out?" he asked quietly, eyes fixed on the path ahead. "All the time," I admitted. "And does it scare you?" I thought about it, then nodded. "Yeah, but not as much as the thought of losing you." He stopped walking, turning to face me. His eyes glistened under the lamplight, and for a second, it felt like the world was holding its breath. "You mean that?" he asked. "More than anything." And then he kissed me right there, under the lamp, in the middle of campus where anyone could see. It wasn't a long kiss, not even deep, but it was enough. Enough to say we weren't going to keep hiding. Enough to say that this, whatever this was worth the risk. It wasn't always easy. There were fights. Nights when the fear came back stronger than the love. Days when silence stretched between us like a chasm neither of us knew how to cross. But every time we broke, we found a way to mend. Every time I thought maybe this was too much, too complicated, too dangerous, he'd reach for my hand, and suddenly it was simple again. Because at the end of it all, it wasn't about the world or their whispers. It was about the way he laughed when I said something stupid, the way his hair curled at the edges when it rained, the way he looked at me like I was more than the mess I thought I was. It was about love. And love, I realized, wasn't meant to be easy. It was meant to be real. The last night in that dorm room before winter break, I sat on my bed, watching Alex pack his things. His movements were slow, deliberate, like he was dragging out the moment. "You're coming home with me, right?" he asked suddenly, his back to me. I blinked. "What?" He turned, his expression nervous but determined. "To meet my family. I want you there." My heart stuttered. Meeting his family wasn't just a step. It was a leap. "You sure?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. He crossed the room, sitting beside me. His hand found mine, warm and steady. I've never been more sure of anything. I searched his eyes, looking for hesitation, for doubt. But all I found was certainty. And love. "Okay," I whispered, squeezing his hand. "I'll come." He smiled then, the kind of smile that could light up even the darkest corners of that tiny dorm room. And when he kissed me, slow and gentle, I knew that no matter what storms waited for us outside, we'd face them together. Because one night in a dorm room, when I changed my clothes and my roommate's eyes changed everything, I found something I never thought I'd deserve. I found him, and that was enough. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.